The New York Giants have their alpha wide receiver, their number one target for Danny Dimes. His name is Kenny Golladay. Kenny Golladay is one of the premier receivers in the NFL when it comes to going down the football field and snatching that rock out of the air. He's one of the NFL's best contested catch wide receivers in the league. 2 seasons ago, with Matthew Stafford throwing him the football, he had the second most deep yards in the NFL. This past season, he did deal with injuries, only 5 games played, but was productive in those 5 games. And here's the thing with Kenny Golladay. You have seen the difference in the Detroit Lions when he plays and he does not play. They were an utter disaster when he did not play last year, but when they played, and when he played with Matthew Stafford, the Lions were actually a solid team. They were winning just as many games as they were losing. So that tells you how valuable Kenny Golladay was for the Lions, and the Giants are hoping he can be that valuable for them. The Giants used to have a big wide receiver. He was about 6'5". He won a Super Bowl, and he destroyed my absolute dreams in 2007. That guy's name was Plaxico Burress. Plaxico Burress was a big part of Eli Manning's progression as a quarterback. And I think that's what Kenny Golladay could be for Daniel Jones. I've been a fan of Daniel Jones really since he came into the NFL. I wasn't super high on him coming out of the draft, as many were not, and I will totally say that I wasn't, and I'll totally accept that. He's still not proven that he can be an elite quarterback or be a franchise quarterback even, but he has shown enough flashes for me to say that if he were given a guy like Kenny Golladay, he could take that jump. He could take that step into being what the Giants drafted him to be, and that's their franchise guy. And I look at Daniel Jones now with the weapons that surround him in New York. Saquon Barkley out of the backfield coming back and hopefully 100% and healthy. When he's healthy, he's probably the most talented running back in all of football. You now have Kenny Golladay as your number one, Sterling Shepard as your solid slot, intermediate, short wide receiver. Darius Slayton is a good deep threat at number 2. And you have Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph at tight end. That's a very solid group of targets. One of the best groups of targets in the NFL now with Kenny Golladay. You have a true number 1, a pretty good number 2, who's a threat to a defense down the field, a complementary underneath receiver, a dynamic, speedy, athletic tight end with an inline tight end in Kyle Rudolph, and a great running back. Now, the offensive line isn't really necessarily great, so you do need to work on that, and I expect them to in the draft. But I look at this offense, and they have a very high ceiling. Jason Garrett, this is something to remember with Jason Garrett. He primarily called the plays and formed the offense around Dez Bryant in Dallas. And when I look at Kenny Golladay, he's very similar to Dez Bryant. You know, both receivers are fairly physical. You're big, long arms and big hands, and guys that are more contested receivers than separation receivers, right? Kenny Golladay is never really open, but he's always open, if that makes sense. So if you throw it in the vicinity, he's got a chance to catch it. He turns 50-50 balls into 70-30 balls. That's what Kenny Golladay is. He's not going to wow you with his route running. It's going to be totally different from Odell, right? For you Giants fans, Odell is like always open. He creates separation with his quickness and his route running. Golladay doesn't really create separation. And that might be a good type of receiver for Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones is a risky type of quarterback. Like, he'll take shots. That's why he's a good downfield passer, because he's willing to throw it to these guys in tight windows, and he can make those throws. Daniel Jones last year was one of the better downfield throwers in the league, and I believe with Kenny Golladay, who's one of the better downfield wide receivers, that will only get better for him, maybe in a way that Stephon Diggs multiplied Josh Allen's ability. There could be something to be said there. So I just look at it and I feel now that you have that true number 1, it takes the pressure off of every other receiver, every other playmaker in this offense. It takes less pressure off Saquon Barkley in the backfield. Hopefully we can keep him healthy. And now you have a true offense that can beat you in a number of ways, in a number of personnel packages, right? You could go 2 tight ends, you could have 3 receivers, you could have 4 receivers, you could have 3 receivers, a tight end, and a running back. So you could do a lot of different things here within this offense to make Daniel Jones successful. And I think Kenny Golladay could be that answer to getting the best Daniel Jones we have yet to see and allowing him to take that next step. The Giants aren't too far away from being a very competitive NFC team. If Daniel Jones can take that step forward, their defense can maintain their level of play, and they just get better offensive line play overall, this team can actually take a massive step forward and surprise a lot of people in 2021. Kenny Golladay is an excellent receiver. I understand you gave him a lot of money, right? The contract was a ridiculous contract, right? It was a pretty big contract. The exact numbers were 4 years, $72 million, up to $76 million. It included $40 million guaranteed. It's about $18 million a year. I actually think that on a normal year, in a normal free agency with the cap not going down, he would have gotten 20 plus million. So that's something to consider, right? He's making about 18 annually, but I think he would have made about 20 annually if the cap was where it's situated last year or possibly next year. So this might have actually been a little bit of a bargain on that end of things in terms of the money. So I'm expecting big things out of Daniel Jones. I'm expecting big things out of Kenny Golladay in 2021. As long as Golladay can get back to form in terms of his health, he will provide a massive boost and the boost that this offense truly needed.